Francis Lee, hello.
Hello,
Congratulations on your film.
thank you.
Can I just ask you, how autobiographical is God's Own Country?
Not massively. So none of the characters are me. None of the characters are my family. I never had that experience myself. In terms of the landscape, I did grow up on those hills in West Yorkshire. My dad is still a sheep farmer there. I now live back there. So for me, it was about exploring my reaction to that landscape, how I felt it had informed me and emotionally and physically. So in that aspect, it's autobiographical, but in every other aspect, not.
Just in broad terms, describe the film for us.
I think the film is about love and hope.
Okay, and just give us an outline of the story.
So it's about Johnny Saxby, who's a young lad running his family's Yorkshire sheep farm on his own because his dad's had a stroke and can't work anymore, and his grandma's very old. All his friends have gone away to university and college. He's very isolated, and he's internalised all of this and shut down emotionally. And he self-medicates by getting very, very drunk every night in the pub and having casual sex without commitment or emotion. And it comes to spring lambing time when all the sheep are going to have their lambs, and he can't do it on his own, so his father employs a Romanian migrant worker who's working his way around the country, and it becomes about their relationship.
Right. Now, this film has been described as like Brokeback Mountain, set in the moors. My title for it is Brokeback Panic or Brokeback Farm. Are you insulted by these comparisons, or are you flattered by them?
I'm extremely flattered. I have to fess up, I've only seen Brokeback once, and that was when it first came out, and I was very moved by it. I thought it was a beautiful film with two incredible central performances. I think that the films are very, very different though. I think that where Brokeback deals with a society that can't accept these two boys being together, and the two lads have to go off and get married to women and have families and have their life in secret, and then it ends very tragically. Whereas God's Own Country, I think, is really not about sexuality. It's not about society's perception of sexuality or coming out. It's very much about a boy who is shut down emotionally and can't open up enough to love and be loved.
Right. Why did you make it? Is your first film?
It is my first
You could
film.
have made a thriller, you could have made a heist movie.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I came from those hills in West Yorkshire. They're very, very important to me. It just felt like the most natural place in the world to go and investigate a story. I guess at the time I was writing it, I was dealing, kind of processing that idea of falling in love and how difficult that actually is. And so those two things kind of collided, the landscape, the love, and it felt very natural. It felt a very organic place to make a film.
Is there also a sense that this is my first film, I don't know if I'll be able to make a second film, so it's best to make the story I'm most passionate about at this point in my life, rather than something that might be commercial?
I mean, I can only really tell stories that I care about and about people I care about, and that things that I feel are resonant and authentic and truthful.
You'll never make it in Hollywood, mate.
And so, the main priority for me was to make a film that felt incredibly truthful and authentic. And I didn't really think beyond that. I wasn't thinking like in terms of a career or where I would go next.
Okay. Now there are some splashes of homophobia in the film. We sense it from Grandmother, and we certainly see it in the pub. I just want to know how accurate a reflection of society now that is, because these days, by and large, people don't care. Do they? Or
I mean, that's a really interesting reading, because I don't think there is any homophobia in the film.
when the guy is sort of splashing?
That's xenophobia. Because
that's just because he's a... Oh, okay.
That's because he's Romanian,
Okay.
not because he's perceived to be gay.
Okay.
So I think that and there's certainly no homophobia from the grandmother. The difficulty that they have, or that Georgi has, the Romanian character, is the perception of him as a foreigner, and very specifically a Romanian.
Okay.
In reality, it's a very interesting point. I've been asked a number of times the question of how realistic is it that these people would be so accepting of a same-sex couple in a rural farming community. It's very much from my perspective. I've never experienced anything but acceptance, and I find it sometimes very interesting that people's perception of rural farming communities are homophobic or sexist or racist or whatever it is, but that's certainly not my experience.
You know, what an interesting way to misread a movie. So I've actually, from the director's point of view, that wasn't intended in the film.
No. It's hopefully you'll get to see it again. And in the scene you're talking about in the pub, the guy who flicks beer at Georgi actually is imitating his accent, and that for me was the xenophobia.
Okay. I like the subtleties in the cinematography in the film. How before they meet up, it's all grey and murky and horrible, and you really get the powerful sense that this kid hates working on this farm. But then the colour palette of the film appears to slowly change. Was that a deliberate touch that you put in there? Things seem to be greener, more colourful, whereas it's all sort of dank and grey early on.
Completely. It's completely planned. Everything about this film is planned. So yes, so we start, as you say, in quite a murky, dark, uninviting area, and when Georgi arrives and their relationship starts to develop, the lighting and the colour palette and the temperature of the place slightly starts to shift. It was also really important for me to film at that time when you're just coming out of winter and going into spring, so you can get that change in that very subtle change in colour palette. So it starts to become more green as the season changes, and because I shot chronologically, that we could achieve that.
How realistic are those animal scenes? I mean, were they simulated?
No,
or did you do the thing that filmmakers love to do, just to torture their actors by making them actually insert their arms up to the shoulder into it?
Yeah, so again...
So none of it's simulated?
No, it was very important to me to make everything very truthful and very authentic. When I watch a film, I love going on an immersive journey. I don't want to be pulled out of it. And so I knew I never wanted a stunt double or a hand double or any fakery whatsoever. So in order to prepare for that, the two boys went and worked on farms solidly for 2 weeks, and they worked long, hard shifts. They'd do 9-10 hours a day, and they learnt everything, absolutely everything, and they became incredibly proficient with the animals. But on top of that, the landscape also impacted on them physically. That cold got in their bones, that tiredness, which helped them physically create these characters as well. So yeah, when you see Josh examining that cow, that is Josh. When you see Georgi birthing a lamb, that is Alec birthing the lamb. It is all absolutely for real.
Are you talking about the cold that you wanted them to feel the cold of the landscape? Did you put them through like a preparation period? How did you
I mean,
put them through farm boot camp?
Yeah, 2 weeks. 2 weeks solidly working, like 10 hours a day.
Now it's just to unpack that for a moment, because I think it's a good point. Tell us why you do that. Why don't you go down the Laurence Olivier route and just pretend? You don't have to immerse yourself in young Dustin Hoffman. You can just make it up as you go. Why the need to do that?
Because I feel that unless you have actually done that and learnt that and experienced it, you can't convey it. I don't buy with the school of pretending. I go down the route of being. So for me, acting is being. And the two actors I work with are completely transformative actors. So they are the total antithesis of their characters. So building that character from scratch, from the moment they were born, giving them all the experiences those characters have had, getting them doing the work those characters know how to do, actually informs everything about how then they deliver it.
What life has the film had so far?
So I finished the film in early January 2017 this year, and then it went straight to Sundance, where it, very amazingly and surprisingly it gathered an awful lot of incredible reviews, and the audience reaction was amazing. It totally sold out. Slightly embarrassingly, I won the Best Director award, and then the film went straight to Berlin, where it sold out all 5 of its screenings and they had to put on extra screenings, and again gathered incredible reviews and audience responses, and again I won an award. And then it's been all around the world, and we've sold it to many countries around the world, so it will be coming out in cinemas worldwide. But and it's done incredibly well.
Are you surprised by that?
Yeah, massively. I had because I had no expectation.
What was your expectation? What was that?
My expectation.
That it would do the festival circuit, become a bit of a festival darling, and then disappear onto DVD and streaming.
Not even that. I really didn't think about it. I just thought about making the film that I wanted to make the way I wanted to make it. And I was incredibly supported within that by the BFI, who funded the film. And they allowed me to make this film the way I wanted to make it.
So why have people responded?
To the film?
Yeah.
I think because at the heart of it, there's a very, very truthful depiction of love. And I think that unusually for love stories, particularly same-sex love stories on screen, it has a very hopeful ending.
It does, and thank you very much for putting that in there, because if the main character had scowled one more time, I would have been complaining. But it's good that you gave it a third act. It must have been very tempting not to give it a third act and make it a statement about depression and about...
No, never. As a person, I love hope. And I love the human condition and how, we've all been through really, really tough times. We all know what that feels like. But I'm a big fan of that little chink of hope, that, that tomorrow will be different. Something will change. And the power of the individual to change their circumstances.
When you say you were a little embarrassed about getting the Best Director award at Sundance, you said, why are you embarrassed? Why is that? Are you being modest, or were there films that you thought were more deserving?
Oh, I didn't see any other films at Sundance. I didn't have time. I was too busy working. But it was, I guess, because I'd never made a film before, and I've never been to film school. I only started to make film maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I only made a couple of shorts, and so for this to happen felt wonderful, obviously. I was very, very honoured, but also very humbled to win an award at one of the best film festivals in the world.
How hard was it to get made? You said you were happy with the support you got from the BFI. Tell me if this was a difficult film for you to get made.
I mean, I think all films are very difficult to get made, the finance for them. I was incredibly lucky. I went through a supported development scheme, and after that the BFI picked it up and funded it.
Now, in the list of thank yous again, you've got Mike Leigh in there, and if I hadn't seen that name, I still would have guessed that he was an influence on me, because the film is very beautifully and intimately directed. So what's Mike Leigh's name doing on the thank you list? How did he help you?
So when I was an actor, I worked with Mike, and was a very big fan of working with him. And had, in fact, when I was a kid at school, I had one really brilliant, inspirational drama teacher who showed me one of his early films, which was Meantime. And it blew my mind that you could have a film like that. And then when I found out how he worked and created his work, it just seemed to fit. That idea of building a character, of really investigating who this person is, and living their life, if you like. And so that was the way, unlike Mike, I don't particularly like improvising. I like the precision of a script. but the way in which he builds characters was very influential on me as an actor, and then consequently as a director, of how I wanted to work with actors. And then Mike was very generous, and we met up and had a lovely afternoon talking about making film and set etiquette, and he was very generous with his time just before I shot this.
As a first timer, what's the situation with British film right now?
I mean, I think with companies like the BFI and Film 4 and BBC Films to a certain extent, there's a lot of help and support, and I think it's very vibrant. I think, there are some really interesting voices coming out of the UK as first films or second films. I think it's a good time, and I think it's a really good time. I think it's actually more an interesting time for queer cinema. I think this year has been an absolute incredible year for queer stories in films that are being taken seriously as crossover films. So you have God's Own Country, Call Me By Your Name, Moonlight won the Oscar. There's a great independent American movie doing really well called Beach Rats. There's Fantastic Woman, a trans story that did very well in Berlin. There's BPM that did incredibly well at Cannes. For all of those films to resonate and stand up as pieces of cinema that are for everybody, not just for a niche.
With your film, were you initially concerned that it was only going to play to a gay audience?
Yeah, again, I didn't really think about it. It never really entered my head who would see this film or, why they would see it. I just tried to be blinkered and concentrate on the work and get the work right. I think what I've noticed as the film has played around the world in various festivals and things is that the audience who comes to see the film is incredibly diverse. There are lots of age ranges, men, women, gay, straight, lots of different people of colour, and their responses have all been incredibly personal. And there's a sense that there's some part of the film that they take for themselves and feels very resonant.
Just firstly, from Britain, what is the sense of the gay community? Do you feel that there's a general acceptance there? Is there still is there homophobia? Is there a lot of talk of homophobia in England, in Britain?
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk for Britain or the community.
From your experience, what about your experience?
I mean, from my experience, no. But I live in a very, I live in a very rarefied world. I work in film. I can't speak for anyone else.